Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of Material for the Brain podcast. My guest for today is Sabine Parzer, founder of the Holistic Dance Institute in Austria. Her professional experience spans over 30 years as a dancer, choreographer, teacher, bodyworker, author, and organizer. I met Sabine 8 years ago when I moved to Vienna, and for 2 years we have collaborated and produced the Austrian Contact Improvisation Festival. Sabine has an amazing capacity to create educational structures, and during the past 10 years, hundreds of participants from all over the world have attended her events and completed her teacher's training. Sabine's story is a mixture of self-responsibility, hard work, and dedication, side by side with compassion, care, and attentiveness. Our conversation inspired me tremendously, and I hope you will enjoy it at least as I did. So without further ado, here is Sabine Parzer. Hello, Sabine Parzer. Welcome to my podcast. How are you?
Hi, Matan. I'm very happy to see you.
Me too. I'm really excited to have you here. I feel very honored to actually have you on my podcast because you played an important role in my personal story coming into Vienna, and you were very generous to me when I finished my dance school, introducing me into the contact improvisation scene here, and I felt always like being honored by you, that you respected what I'm doing. And so I feel like it's like you have so much structure that you've created, and this is my tiny way to give back to all the things that you offered me to host you here and to also give you a space to be seen and recognized for all the things that you've done. So yeah, thank you for taking the opportunity to jump in here.
Thank you, Matan. Can I share the memory of when I first met you?
Sure, for sure. I'm actually, surprise me now.
Yes, exactly. I remember you wrote me an email if there's any way you can participate in the Contact Festival in Vienna, and it was still in VUC so it's still called Contact Festival Vienna, and you wrote to me. And there wasn't a teaching position left yet, but I said, well, why don't you come in and support the festival however you can, since you're obviously a professional dancer. And then you came, and I remember you have a striking appearance and you're a beautiful dancer. And I think what I most remember, though, is you sitting in the teacher's circle where we had our sharings, and you had such a quiet but clear presence that I was like, okay, so here is a man who is interested but can also be listening and be present at the same time. And I really appreciated that.
Thank you. I must say, if I look at those days more honestly, I think I was very ego-driven in those days, and the person I am now would be much more would experience much more gratitude to everything that came through. And in a way, for me, it's also like a bit of a personal closure to start giving back to many people who offered me things, because I was very ambitious, and also I'm I finished studying dance at the age of 30, so I had a lot of pressure to make money, and so I was too obsessed with ambition, and so yeah, it's my little way to say thank you.
Yeah, I get that. And at the same time, I feel like ambition is not necessarily a bad thing. I think ambition, it can be, if channeled in the right way, and like you said, also with a certain amount of perspective and gratitude, it can serve. Yeah, if ambition serves a larger purpose, or serves a larger community, or serves even the art form, I think ambition can be a very clear driving force. Yeah. So I saw your ambition back then, but I also saw your receptivity. So
well,
yeah.
Thank you, older sister. looking from
Hmm.
above to the young, too energetic boy.
Yeah, beautiful mover for sure.
So maybe, I haven't talked to you for quite some time.
Yeah.
So maybe you can share a little bit like what is happening with you? What are you doing nowadays? How is it going for you with the pandemic? The last thing I remember is when we met is that you showed me the beautiful yurt that you built in the in your back kind of backyard in Saint Andre Verden. So what is going on with you at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I'm navigating, as most of us, in these interesting times. I run an institute for trainings which live off of being in live presence. But I've been very fortunate, I would have to say, um, that I also am quite versatile. So I feel that I have many things that I can work with. And in the times when workshops have been possible, I've been teaching workshops, many of them in very condensed times. And when there was, when it wasn't possible to teach, then I've been writing a lot, actually. I've been translating my card set. I've been doing a lot of single sessions, actually, and doing some online trainings and doing some administrative work that has been kind of long overdue. So I don't get bored at all, for sure. And in a way, it's also created sometimes, especially now this winter, sometimes to also reflect, to reorganize some of my trainings, and to actually commit to writing my book. I've been working on my book over the last couple of years, or combining texts that I've written, and I actually like I I've said this a couple of times already, but I'm turning 50 this year, and I feel like it's time to get the book out. So some of the gift of Corona has just simply been having time to write and having time to be more at home, not travel so much. I've been in Russia for so many years now, traveling so much also to Germany and to different places, and just to have time to be at home, and to kind of focus in a little bit more. I think for most of us that has been also a gift. Less strung out and more concentrated. Um,
Yeah, to be honest, I'm always super impressed and amazed when I hear you and how you manage all the things that you manage. Because I mean, I'm also a parent like you for two kids. I mean, they're a bit younger, of course, it's different, but nevertheless, to hold that responsibility next to the responsibility of managing a business that is, like you're running so many things simultaneously. But so, what is happening with all your programs at the moment? Like, did you have to stop the teacher training, or in all these
yeah.
continuous
No.
programs, or what did you do?
Yeah. Lots and lots of postponing and rescheduling. The year 2020 is the year of rescheduling. Um, no, I was able to start the new teachers training. We delayed it. It was supposed to start in March, and then it started in September. And it's on hold right now. Basically, from since November till March, have been no workshops scheduled. Um, but there's a new regulation now that basically says that if you have an official training program where there's also exams or certifications that have a deadline, that you're allowed to hold those workshops or to hold those trainings. So starting from March on, everything will run again and will hopefully keep on running. Of course, with different regulations. But I mean, one of the consequences that of the situation is also that I have a much bigger space now. I have this beautiful space. It's a Buddhist center in the 16th district of Vienna, and it has 200 square meters. So there's plenty of space to kind of be separate in the room. There is a super high-tech ventilation air thingy that pumps in fresh air every 15 minutes. So to kind of, I think it allowed me also to think bigger or to create bigger structures, which is an interesting sort of paradox. In a way, I could have gone the way of saying, oh no, I'm afraid that everything is going to collapse and I will have to kind of reduce my programs. But I just kind of felt like they've already been so grounded and in a way also established that I'm just going to go for renting the bigger spaces, making sure that everything keeps on running. Financially, that's not that easy, and it's even a bigger risk, but it's also making something possible. Yeah, it makes it possible for people to come. It makes it possible to continue. Yeah. So we never know. But I guess to your question of how I'm handling all of that through all these years, I think being a single mom was sort of my biggest challenge in my life. I've been a single mom for a long time, basically since my kids were very small. And just kind of going through the challenge of organizing myself from day to day and living with restrictions also. um, I, I kind of feel like in these times, people can't go out to restaurants, people can't go out to bars. I kind of feel like, yeah, I haven't been able to do that in the last 20 years anyway. So, yes, it would be nice to go out to a concert or, sometimes get a drink, but I've been living with restriction for so long because of being a single mom that that for me it's not a new situation. Yeah, I'm glad I live in nature. I'm glad I live in a place where I can recharge. I feel like I have a lot of resources to keep on recharging myself. Yeah, one of them is meditation. My Buddhist practice has always been there to support me also through all of these things. Being in nature and living in a great community of friends and having having a fantastic job. Yeah, I love my job. I mean, I'm sure as as many of us, or as you also, it's really unnerving, and there's aspects of it I don't like. But I mean, hey, I get to dance all I get to dance for my living. So I think that has been one of my main places of recharge all the time, teaching dance. Yeah, dancing and teaching dance, seeing people, making people happy. Yeah, helping people to feel themselves again, helping people to connect to themselves again, is such a rewarding job. um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was always necessary, and now even more, because I feel like that there is so much of concern to preserve life, and in that process we kind of ignore everything that actually is necessary in life. So if I, like this kind of, yeah, that's one of the reality of the corona. And if this crisis will ever over, I think we will definitely need to go back and rediscover all those necessary things like touch, play. Yeah, and also I wanted to comment, like you mentioned about, that you decided to take a bigger risk, and that is also something that I find you particularly inspiring within the field of dance and improvisation and contact improvisation. There are not a lot of people who I feel that perceive their work also, I would say, um, like from a certain business perspective, like that. Like I feel like you are really doing courageous things, and therefore you get to where you get. It's not like that, if I'm interested in dance, I'm not entitled to have many students and run workshop, and like, and I feel that for me you're an example of somebody who wants to teach and want to guide, like who wants to guide people, and then you work hard, you take risk, and then you create it for yourself, even though that the odds are like against you, in the core, like, what you said with corona, it's true. Like I feel it for myself. I decided to shut down all the classes I was running in Vienna because I was afraid of, the cost of the studio. And maybe in my case it's a bit different how the business is structured than yours, but yeah, like, salute to you, very inspiring.
Thank you.
Sabine, I want
Maybe I can
to, yeah,
just,
sorry, yeah,
yeah,
go
I
ahead, go
think I
ahead.
would like to share just one little aspect of that, which has to do with being a single mom. Is when I came back from the States, I lived in the States for 9 years and then another year in Berlin. But when I came back from the States, I felt like I kind of sucked up some of that American attitude of you can do it, yeah, or you can do your own thing, also kind of create your own method. Yeah. So I kind of felt like I had 10 years of sort of having that internalized. And then there was this other story of me being a single mother. And then I had stopped dancing for 5 years in between. When I came back and I had my children, I was also really tired of the business of professional dance. And so I really said, I'm stopping dancing. And I was just a body therapist in the rehab center. And then there was a moment where I felt like I would get really depressed. Like I was sensing myself getting sick and depressed. And then I started dancing in my kitchen again. I started feeling that need to reconnect to that love in my life, which is dance. Yeah. And then I also realized that if I want to do this, I was 35 at the time. If I want to do this, I'm going to have to do it in a way that it's also sustainable. So that because I had been working as a professional dancer in the US for 10 years, where you make no money. Yeah, you can be a fantastic dancer, and people work in the coffee shops, yeah, or clean offices at night, yeah, because there was no money involved or very very little. That I knew that if I want to kind of follow my true self also within that, I will have to create some sort of business sense, or I would have to create some sort of structure in order to hold that, to support that. So I feel that I have that also with many of my students. I often feel a lot of inspiration and talent, but there is another aspect of that, which is sort of the grounding aspect of, okay, how are you creating a structure for all of that inspiration to be contained and to grow? Yeah. And I see that with so many of us, so many artists. I mean, there's so many brilliant people out there, but oftentimes what's really missing is sort of the step by step building up, step by step creating structures, step by step also kind of really grounded sense of, okay, how are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to feed your children? Yeah. And so that was not my creating the institute or creating these structures was not my natural tendency. My natural tendency would be to to create art and be in nature and have a good time, yeah, or offer it to my friends, yeah. But I kind of had to, and looking back at it, I'm also thankful for it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think your story for me is the like from what I know, of course, and I apologize if I project some things, but for me, your story is the story of self-responsibility in that sense. And it's interesting what you're saying about living in the US. I mean, I don't know so much about your American culture, although my brother is living there and my wife has family there. But from what I get, and also because Israel, where I grew up, is to some degree is being quite strongly influenced by the US. And if I compare it to Austria, Austria is the last country that motivates people to become entrepreneurs and to take risks.
Yes.
It's like the land of safety, like come take your 14 salaries. Don't worry, you have your day off and you're protected. Yeah. And if I compare it to the US, yeah, it's like the land of opportunity, so to speak. So yeah, it's nice to see how maybe that's the power of traveling, like that you can kind of reinvent yourself back in your own country and take things. Yeah, actually, there is so many things I want to speak to you about, and time is short, as you know. And actually, you started speaking about something that I wanted to ask, and maybe you can take us a little bit deeper through that. And one thing that you have merged very beautifully in your practice is dance and healing, and I would say even art and healing, because dance for me is much more connected to healing, but art, from how I experienced, can be also very abusive. And maybe you can take us a little bit, like, how did it start manifesting in your own life, this need to merge them, and like how did it take actual shape?
Yeah, that's beautiful, and that's a big question. In terms of my personal story, I mean, I was a professional dancer training and dancing in a company in Chicago, and it's hard to say, but it was really like my big dream was to dance in the company, but then I ended up in a company with an artistic director who was really a bitch. I'm sorry to say that, but there's no other word for it.
You're speaking to an Israeli person. You can put the
Okay.
political correctness aside.
And it wasn't just a personal animosity. It was really an energetic situation where at one point I heard a good explanation that artist, she as an energetic force, she was like a black hole. She basically sucked the creativity and the energy out of her dancers. And so I was in that situation. I was 20. I was super young. And it was so crueling because here I am, having the best job in the modern dance field in Chicago at the time. That was actually a paid job also, but it was the oldest running dance company. And I am miserable. Yeah, I am miserable because I don't feel free. I feel abused. I feel used for my creative work. And I feel shamed. Yeah, so, and the unfortunate truth is that happens, and I didn't realize it until later, but that happens in many theater companies and in many dance companies. Yeah. So all over the art world, it's just particular, I think, when you're an actor or when you're a dancer, because you're personifying that person's work. If there's a director or a choreographer, you're also like, you're manifesting their work in their body, and you're in that rehearsal space all the time. And since we're sensitive beings also, and we actually want our bodies to be open and free, you kind of end up with a even harder hit, I would say, on the energetic body. Or on the physical body. Yeah. And that is hard to digest. It took me many years to sort of re-find my trust in that. So maybe it was good. Maybe it was good because I started looking for healthier places very early on, healthier places to dance. I had a few different sort of landmarks, I would say, in terms of my own healing process in the early days. And one is that I went to a healer when I was 25 in Chicago who had learned from the Hopi Indians, and he basically like cracked my energy body open. He gave me something which is kind of similar to a rolfing session, but he also gave me a reading. He read my akasha. Yeah, he read my aura. He read stuff from my past lives and sort of things that I could sense, but I didn't know about. Yeah, so a lot of energy, and in a way, it was also an initiation. Yeah, but one of the other main sort of events that happened were me going to the jams in New York. I left Chicago and I went to New York to live for a year. And I didn't want to audition anymore. I didn't want to rehearse. I didn't want to, I was 27, so I was kind of rebelling also against the system. I just wanted to dance and have a good time. And I did not want to be confined to interacting only with professional dancers in a professional setting. I wanted to meet other people. And here I was in New York. And there were scientists and there were lay people and there were, people from all different kinds of backgrounds doing contact. And all of a sudden, sort of a world opened up to me. Yeah, a free sort of creative improvisational space that I felt like, okay, I could be who I am. I could be a professional dancer within that. And the other aspect was going to Earth Dance and taking a workshop with Stephen Yoshin, who is one of the founders of Earth Dance. And he took us to do authentic movement out in nature. And that was the most amazing healing experience for me. To this day, I kind of owe him my sort of my love for authentic movement, and authentic movement especially also in nature, because it really opened up it opened up a world of sensing, a world of experiencing myself, a world of interacting through my dancing body that was just new. Yeah, as you know, I was in the studio all the time. Yeah, I don't know, 15 years, studio. So those are kind of the earlier memories. And if I look at my work now, I've been negotiating the world of dance with the world of therapy. I worked as a therapist, as a dance therapist in a rehabilitation center for 14 years with people after severe accidents. And I came in as an artist. I came in as somebody who had a very intuitive sense of what people might need, but I didn't have the sort of therapeutic training. I ended up getting more. I ended up doing a training in bodywork that also contained a lot of counseling, systemic way of looking at people, and I got trained a lot by the staff at the rehab center that I worked in. So it was lots of learning through doing. Yeah. And of course, I've done lots of trainings afterwards. But when I started as an artist. And I also realized very quickly that what we do in dance, it just simply is healing. Yeah, moving is healing. Touch is healing. Taking a conscious breath is healing. Yeah, I think it depends so much on the environment. It depends on your intention as the person guiding somebody. It of course it takes sensitivity when you work with a severely traumatized patient. Yeah, but all of us we need that. Yeah, the engineer needs it, the forest manager needs it, the doctor needs it, the artist needs it. It's so basic. Yeah, and at the same time, within that context, and this is really what I learned in the rehab center, within the context of moving, touching, sensing, expressing, yeah, every single one of us can find themselves and kind of find the avenue that or the sort of the energetic path that we're on. I mean, we're coming to the archetypes in a way, since you were talking about it earlier, but it's Jung talks about that every seed is within the person. Yeah, Jung, in the Jungian analysis, there's no, yeah, or I would say this way: Jung said that basically all of the seeds for all of our potential are already there. We just need to give it space and time to grow. Yeah, and so when I look at breath, touch, movement, expressing, it's basically giving every one of us the individual space to grow into ourselves. So it's not about adding stuff from the outside, but rather growing from the inside and saying, okay, here I am, and here are my talents, and here's my potential, and here's the time that I need for it, and here's the space that I need for it. But it's really growing from the inside out. And so if I look at dance and healing, it's just one of the same. I don't separate it at all. And I get goosebumps when I talk about it because it's still so exciting. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, one can feel it through your voice. I hear your story, and I think that, yeah, to some extent, maybe I experienced like a shortcut. You went through it when you were 20, and I started working as a professional dancer when I was 30. So I had these 10 years of, I would say, emotional skills. Maybe if I compare my 20-year-old to my 30-year-old person. And also I had the luck. I remember one choreographer in particular that I worked with. His name is Martin Nachbar, a German man. And he told us in the beginning of the creation process that the most important thing to him is to recognize who is in the room and what do they need to experience through the creation process. And I felt it, wow, this is so inspiring. It's like the opposite operating mode than like, these are the tools for my creation and I will take what I need from them. But very quickly I went to the dance field, and then I had the opposite experience of being a tool in someone's creation. And I remember like I put a clear board and I said no more very quickly. So maybe I've managed to avoid what you've been going through. But at the same time, I feel I was also embodying that quality, because for me, I remember when I was working with you, because you remember we had there was 2 years that we were collaborating on the creation of the Contact Festival, the Austrian Contact Festival, and I remember that you brought a lot of aspect of embodiment into the professional environment. And I'll just remember, I give you one example that I remember clearly, is that before we would start talking about what we need to do, we would take a moment of sharing and just everybody like just giving a bit of space where they are also emotionally and etc. But back then, I think that I still held very strongly the idea that being professional is to put your shit aside. And I think that many times I was a little bit impatient in those meetings, because I felt like, oh, come on, hey, we have things to do, let's put it aside, like, I think it was also a very specific, like we somehow we met all the time in my home, and maybe there was some energy there in this little cave that made everybody pour their stuff. But now I see things differently, and it brings me to one question for you, like, so why do you I mean, I read it in one of the modules that you're offering, that you're like suggesting people to use embodiment as a foundation for professionalism. So why do you think that it's so necessary? And I think this goes way beyond being a dancer, but why do you think that it's important to have a relationship to the body in regard, like in your professional environment?
Well, I think our body is our home. Yeah, I think our body is the container, the vessel for all of that we do, for our energetic, emotional body mind. Yeah, is contained within our physical manifestation here on this earth, and the body is just simply incredibly wise, incredibly smart. Yeah, with all of its aspects. Yeah. So working on, I mean, embodiment is such a big word also. I'm kind of careful because it's being used, embodiment is being used in psychology, in coaching, in many different sort of fields. And I find it to be important to also look at embodiment the way we as dancers or somatic practitioners look at it, which is really a way of connecting on a very deep level, on a cellular level, to ourselves by sensing an inner body while working with an outer body. Yeah, a lot of what I do in my work is actually connecting the inner body with the outer body. Yeah, there's methods that work mostly in, and there's methods that mostly work out. And I'm really like expressing. Yeah, and the other one is sensing. And I'm really interested in the movement in between. Yeah, I'm interested in going inside, feeling your inner impulses, learning how to deal with your feelings, learning how to express your feelings, but also learning how to sense organs, sense a deeper sense of connectivity on different levels within your body system. But I'm also interested in how do you actually articulate that? How do you express that? How do you express your art also? And so I feel like embodiment, if you break it down on a very simple level, is you're just going to sell yourself much more efficiently if you own the experience. Yeah. If I talk to somebody else about, I don't know, writing a thesis on a very conceptualized concept, yeah, it will not come across as authentic. If I talk about my experience that I've had in my body to somebody else, I will, and even if I don't use the right words, like even right now, I don't feel like I'm using the right words, but you can probably get a sense of what I'm talking about simply by looking at me or reading my body language or feeling the experience that I've had within that field, so that it goes beyond language. Embodiment is a way of inhabiting our experiences. Yeah. If I go to teach dance and I've never done the practice, if I don't have the experience in the practice, I will not be able to pass it on. I need the physical depth of it in order to be able to convey what I actually want my students to go to. Yeah, it's like I would be hypocritical if I don't teach if I don't know what I'm teaching. Yeah. But at the core of it, I feel like it's the body is so smart. The body has so much information. The body knows if it feels safe or not. It knows if it's authentic or in line, or if there's an energy flow. So learning how to connect with the body on a deeper level gives us so many tools on so many different levels, and so many different life skills also. That for me, embodiment is not it's not only a professional question, it's a life question, or it's a life attitude also. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Or can I
Yeah.
can I no
Yeah.
it's interesting that many people when I interview people in the podcast, many people are concerned if they make sense, and for sure, yeah, I feel like it makes a lot of sense, but I wanna dive a little bit deeper to understand really what you mean, because you said at a certain point that you feel that that it actually can become more efficient as well for yourself. And now I want to differentiate two things, because if I think about, okay, like I'm existing within a professional environment that I'm expected to perform something. It doesn't matter now if it's dancing or whatever. And when we talk about the efficiency, is the efficiency towards what I'm supposed to execute, or the efficiency towards my well-being? Because I think that that's where a lot of people tend to go for, like, hey, this is a professional environment, let's put aside all the personal processes that you're going through and focus on the result. And then you can argue, like, yeah, if I want to have the best result for the creation that I'm interested, again, in regardless to the field of interest, then yes, we should all just suppress ourselves a little bit, sacrifice ourselves for the external thing that we are doing. And human resource, and then on a level, human resource, we can switch the people. So then it brings it to the question: is it more of a moral question, is it more a technical question? Am I solving a efficiency problem, or am I dealing with morality of, like, take care of the people you're hiring, take care of yourself? What do you think?
No, I think you're asking exactly the right question, and I'm glad that you do, so not to be misunderstood. Yeah, of course, I don't mean the efficiency in the way that our Western capitalist world views it. Yeah, I mean efficiency on an energetic level. Yeah, I mean if I'm on an authentic level, if I have if I have an intention, yeah, and if that intention is actually in line with my experience and my knowledge, I will be much more likely to be able to create the physical circumstances for that creation, for that intention to actually manifest itself. Yeah, that's simple energy law. Yeah, so if I power through it, if I cut off my feelings, if I do it just to get through it and to make the money, it has a different energy quality than if I say, okay, here's what I love. Here's what I feel that might be offering something to somebody else. Here is what I also know within my own body or within my own experience. And here's what I would like to create. Most likely then people will come and they ask you, oh, you've been doing this, or I can see, like, that's what I mean by efficient. Like, you don't need that much marketing anymore, or people will offer you something, or people will say, oh, I've seen you do this. Can you actually teach me? Or when are you doing the next workshop? That's what I mean by efficiency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, because I think, like, you brought I think you differentiate efficiency from what is like perceived, maybe, as you mentioned this word, like Western capitalism. But I think and that's maybe something that I'm interested to crack and to understand, is how to merge the two, because I think that there is many great things that I cherish about the idea of free market and letting people, exchange and create and fulfill their dream. But at the same time, like this kind of obsession with results really moves us away from being human sometimes. And maybe, I can relate it also through my personal story with ambition. And then I'm asking, like, how, like, because I do believe that, when you're efficient to yourself on an emotional level, you do perform better, but I cannot prove it. It's like I don't have empirical data to show, look, that's the best economical module to follow, because then but if you invest so much in an employee, but you just kind of push them, as you've been experiencing in the dance company, then you end up with the person leaving, and then you have to restart again, and that's not very efficient. So
yeah, so I think in a way it's a lot about balance. Yeah, it's like it's nature also. There's a come and a go. There's the night and the day. There is energy that goes out and there's energy that goes in. Yeah. So like I said earlier, I'm such a structure freak. Yeah. I love structure, and I love clarity in structure, because it enables the free space. It enables something to emerge. Yeah. And that in a way is also kind of this clarity versus intuition. Yeah, I'm studying with Hugh Milne right now, who is the founder of Visionary Craniosacral Work, and I'm so impressed by him because he comes from a long lineage of osteopaths. Yeah, he's a super high trained osteopath, and he teaches the technique very clearly, and at the same time he teaches intuition, and he teaches intuition in the sense that is also quite technical. Yeah, in the sense of, okay, are you looking at it from your vagus nerve? Are you looking at it through your hands? Are you listening through your ears? Like, you can actually train intuition. Yeah. So when we're looking at efficiency, it's I feel like it's sometimes the balance of, okay, here it needs something very technical. Here it needs something very clear. Here it needs an Excel sheet and a calculation to make sure that this project is going to be funded, that there's enough funds for it to work. Yeah. So I'm not saying that embodiment necessarily only means sensing and feeling free all the time. Yeah. Embodiment can mean, okay, I want to actually do something in this world, and I'm going to set up a structure, or I'm going to invest some money, and I'm going to build a business. Yeah. But there's also a way of doing that from an embodied place. Yeah. In the sense that we listen to our boundaries. Yeah. We listen to the connections to the people that we work with. We listen to our own joy. Yeah, or sensibility around, am I just doing this because I've created it, or is my joy still in it? Yeah. So staying authentic, staying in a listening, perceptive quality, and adding it with a sense of clarity, and adding it with a sense of business. Why not? Yeah. Why not bring it down to this world, but with a different kind of quality? And I see that. I think that's also a new business model. I'm not into business at all. Yeah, I just kind of turned into a businesswoman because I had to, or created my own business because I kind of had to. But I talk to many people who also come to my workshops who come from more of a business perspective and say there is a different way of creating business structures, or creating very down to earth aspects of life, which I think in a lot of ways are also needed. Yeah, we're going to need some very, very fancy technology in order to save our Earth. Yeah, and we're going to need some very clear thinking engineers to bring that down. And we're also going to need some business people to invest in that. Yeah, but that is, if you come from, and if I go back to the place of embodiment, and here's my political thing, yeah, is if I start sensing myself, if I start sensing my body, as a living structure. And then if I go out into nature and sense that I am not separate from nature, I am part of nature. Nature is in me, and I am part of nature. Yeah, it's not a separate thing. Yeah, then I'm gonna start having a different ecological awareness, kind of automatically. It's not a concept anymore, but it's an experience. And if I have that experience and then I go out, and if I end up in a business situation where I actually do have money, I might choose to invest in something that is connected to saving the earth. Yeah. So I feel like in many ways embodiment can have so many ripples within the rest of our society, because it's at the core of it is about reconnecting. It's reconnecting to our initial, our initial is not the right word, but to our innate nature. Yeah. And if we recognize what this innate nature can do within even our contemporary world, that we need to reconnect to it, but we can also connect it out. We don't have to stop living in cities. We don't have to stop living our contemporary lives. We just kind of have to connect it and do it with a different quality. Okay, it's a bit of a rant here, but.
Yeah, no, a lot of things to respond to. First, like you have an interesting perspective, and I think you brought many things that we could dive into for many hours. Like you just said now, our innate nature, and it's like that's a big thing to say. I mean, I also tend to tilt in that direction, to believe that humans have some innate nature, and that we are not just a mere construct of our social environment. And I think that what you said about this connection between man and nature, and I mean, I think that there is a certain I think the biggest challenge, I think, is like that I see now is that you mentioned these bigger problems about saving the planet, global warming, and those problems definitely needs an environment that supports people, innovative people. No? We need to give innovative people the space to be innovative and creative in order to solve these problems. No, and the second thing that you brought, and I think that I can relate to it, is that many of the things are not on the level of experience. And I had one. I'm relatively, if I'm being honest now, I'm relatively suppressing global warming in my personal life. I have 2 kids, and like this kind of dealing with a 4-year-old crying kid that just threw a dinosaur at his daughter, and they're fighting, pulls you back into like the microsecond, and you don't think about like what's going to happen in 10 years. That's where I am. You can judge it or not, it doesn't matter for me, but that's where I am. And but I had an experience in a Wachuma ceremony, this kind of psychedelic medicine, and I had a moment that I felt fire inside of me so strong, and I said, like, man, like this earth is burning, and it's burning outside of me and inside of me, and it was really tangible, and it immediately connected me, like, this is what is happening globally now. It's burning. And of course, now in my daily life, it's not that this experience is automatically changing every pattern, habitual pattern I have, but I think that it brings it down into a different level. And I think that's maybe what you're aiming with or maybe that could be a clear way to reframe the idea that embodiment is necessary for professionalism, because it anchors us in experiences and not only in ideas. If we want to, let's say, fight global warming, but it's just an idea, many people maybe will argue that this idea is not really relevant. But if you have some embodied experience of global warming, which of course we can talk about it more, but it's a different thing.
Well, and it brings it's a beautiful segue, actually, because it brings us to the issue of shadow. Yeah, where if you truly work with embodiment, you are actually going to look at aspects of yourself that are also uncomfortable, that are in your shadow. Yeah, in the Jungian terms, shadow is an archetype, and it's a part of our unconscious that we are not able to look at. Yeah, they used to think. Verena Kast talks about that. She's a famous Jungian analyst in Zurich. She said that in the 70s and the 80s, they thought that the shadow would still be able to, like at the end of sort of a long psychoanalysis process, you could integrate your shadow fully. And they've totally given up on that idea now. They've basically decided that it's not going to be possible to integrate all of your shadow. Basically, it's just about recognizing that we all have a shadow. Yeah. And the shadow is basically stuff that we are unaware of. We can't see for ourselves. But when we work with an in-depth exploration of our bodies, we're going to immediately, sometimes faster and sometimes slower, but there's no other way than to meet aspects of ourselves that are dealing with our unconscious body. Yeah. And it might be fears, it might be trauma, it might be family stories, it might be desires that we didn't think we had, it might be physical ailments that have been stuck in the body and are sort of waiting to be released. That's also part of shadow, is basically unresolved issues, yeah, unresolved cellular information that we've been carrying through generations, yeah. So why I'm mentioning that in connection to the activism is because I often feel that there's a lot of, let's say, also ecological activism, and it's not necessarily helping the cause, because there's a lot of activists out there who are also quite aggressive and quite dualistic, in the sense of, you are the bad guys and we are the good guys. Yeah. So I feel that embodiment can also really help. It's really also a way of creating peace, because once you recognize that you are not perfect and you might have some of these aspects of that person out there who is maybe right wing, or maybe, I don't know, just some sort of industrial bulldozer, yeah, contaminating the world. At the core of it, we probably have similar issues, yeah. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect in any way, yeah. That I don't say, okay, these guys need to go away, yeah, or we need to have some severe regulations. That it doesn't mean that we don't need to stop abuse, yeah. But I think by looking and going deeper into ourselves, and we do that through the body, we do that through touch, through movement, through, especially authentic movement is such a fantastic tool, yeah. But it also works it also comes up very strongly in body work, yeah. That if we start recognizing that we have a shadow, we start working with it, we start working with trauma, with family stories, with heritage, yeah, then we're just much more it's a much more compassionate way to navigate through life, because it's not, we are not cutting off so much of ourselves, so we don't have to cut off so much of somebody else, yeah. And in a way that also goes to the core of this nature and man division, yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why men, yeah, I'm talking about manhood, yeah, not men in particular, but sort of humanity, yeah, decided that we have to separate from nature, is because nature was simply scary, yeah. It was too raw, it was too wild, it was dangerous. Of course, there needed to be also some sense of safety, yeah. And it just escalated. That division just escalated into where we are right now, where we live so separated from the earth that we're abusing her and we're destroying her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, first I must say that it's so nice to hear the kind of message that you're bringing, because I feel that to some extent this message is under attack at the moment politically. First, I really agree with the concept of the shadow, and I think that it's something that I'm also trying to integrate in my own life, like to be more aware of, like in which areas my shadow is managing my choice making, etc. and again, I think that it's the shadow is an invitation to take responsibility over things. And I heard one American thinker called Coleman Hughes that talked in his podcast about, and he gave a really nice example, because I think many people nowadays, I see, and maybe we will dive into it later, put a lot of blame on, the system, the external circumstances that bring their suffering. And he gave a really nice example that if you're driving and if you're walking the street and a car hits you and you are not responsible for that accident, somebody else fucked it up, you're still responsible for taking care of your rehabilitation. The driver can never rehabilitate your own body. And I think that that's very similar to trauma. And now, of course, we can argue that maybe the system is so abusive that it's not just one car accident, but as you're trying to recover, there is constantly more and more car accidents coming your way, and you just simply cannot do the recovery. But I think that there is a difference, and nowadays in the world of social activism, it's not present at all, in my opinion. There is a difference between healing and social justice. It's two different things, and it seems to me that those people who are strongly advocating for social justice are suppressing healing, because there is so much embodiment of aggression and like a militant mindset to achieving goals, that I'm saying, like, how the hell are we going to have a better world if we're just going to be tearing each other apart, achieving this utopia? It's not going to be a utopia anymore.
I mean, the thing is I don't have the solutions. Yeah, I can only look at the field that I'm working at. Yeah.
No, I invited you to have the solution, Sabine.
The one solution, right? Yeah. I think it takes many of us, and some of us have, like I said earlier, some of us have the technical skills to, I don't know, create a new solution to get rid of the to help the ecological disaster, to turn it around, which I'm not sure that is possible anyway, but to kind of soften the blow. Yeah. So here are the engineers, and there are the the lawyers and the speakers and the activists who do their part, in creating awareness. And here I am as a holistic dance pedagogue and a teacher and a bodyworker, doing my part. Yeah. I'm not saying that either one is more valuable or not. I think actually that it takes all of us to do our part. Yeah. And I think it's also important to listen to what energy or what talents do I have. I think it comes back to the earlier thing that we talked about when we talked about ambition. Yeah. Ambition is not a bad thing. When you aim towards a bigger goal. And the bigger goal definitely needs to be saving our Earth in order to save ourselves here also. Yeah, it needs to be reconnecting. It needs coming back to a more natural way of life. It needs to be also healing. It needs to be healing, basically. And I agree with what you were saying, that fighting for something is not necessarily healing, but it could be integrated. I think healing could be definitely integrated, and I do know that many social activists are active in that. I mean, Anna Halprin was one of the first people to combine dance rituals in order to create social healing. Yeah, her world Earth circles, I think she calls them. Yeah. And she started that, I don't know, in the 90s or something, So I think the main thing, and maybe we're coming back also in a full circle here, is the quality and the intention with what you do something. Yeah. And again, I'm also not saying that we should not put a stop to abuse. Yeah. There's way too much abuse on way too many different levels out there still. Yeah. And it needs, again, an embodied sense of saying no. Yeah. There's a difference if I just say no, la, 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 or if I say no. Yeah. And that no is not a fighting no, but it's simply a no that has to stop right now. And that will create a dialogue, or ideally a dialogue, rather than oh, what the fuck are you doing? And more aggression. Yeah. So I think that is kind of where again, if we're coming back to embodiment, to dance, to movement, to touch, yeah, where we can teach on a broader scale, we can teach and hold spaces that have a different quality because it's more connected, and then maybe it can also be more peaceful or calmer, or we can invite these healing spaces in more aspects than just a dance studio. Because I know I think I know that about you also, but I also know that about myself is that I was so tired of just teaching dance for the dancers. I wanted to start teaching dance for people, and people who live normal lives, and people who affect other people's lives. Yeah, because dance is beautiful, but it also has a tremendous amount of healing power. Yeah, that I think many people can benefit from.
Totally. I think like from the simple practical aspect of just dealing with reducing discomfort, but also into like diving into your soul. But I do agree with you, but I also have I also have the side of me that says like, yeah, man, the world of dance and the world of contact improvisation and the world of embodiment is also suffering from very similar pathologies any other place. So how, if it's such a healing force, how is it that we are not all going there? And I think that the reason why I think that your message is important is I think that when you completely remove self-responsibility, there cannot be any healing. That's how I experience working with myself. And also I think that, I don't know, you pointed up something that for me is a fundamental question, that I think that if you disagree about that, there's a very hard possibility to actually come into agreement. If you don't see that suffering starts from within, like that this is like that you're actually suffering because you're reacting to external circumstances, that they could be the most unfair or not justified situation, but it's you are reacting to that. If you take your responsibility and say no, it's just the external environment, I think that it's very hard to come to an agreement and to move forward. And I think that as I perceive many situations now, I think that this idea is not that accepted anymore, or that it's being challenged.
I think it's very interesting, Matan, that you talk about this because you're Israeli also. I mean, I hate to project something onto you here now, but I also find that, yeah, I find that very meaningful. Yeah, because I think it's one of the most poignant situations between Israeli and Palestinians, with the Jewish people having had such a story of victimhood. Yeah, and I think it's very interesting, also having grown up in Austria and sort of looking at that history of, my parents grew up after the Second World War, and still I grew up in Austria. So there is some residue of that history within my own system, which has to do with some of that shadow. So if you're talking about why is the contact community, or why is the dance community not a more healing space, or why aren't we perfect yet? Yeah, I just see it as a because we're not perfect. Yeah, and it takes it. I don't know if we'll ever get there. Yeah, all we can do is go step by step. Yeah, all we can do is take one daily practice after the other, and it's about connecting. It's about connecting to our children. It's about connecting to our partners. It's about connecting to ourselves. It's about connecting to nature and the people around us. Yeah, the Karmapa, who is kind of the equivalent of the Dalai Lama in one of the Tibetan lineages, Karmapa talks about it is, if you have good relationships to 30 people in your life, that's good karma. Yeah. So I think we can also scale down our expectations of ourselves. Yeah. So here I am, carrying the torch of wanting to save the world through dance. But if I tone it down again that living a simple life, living a life with your children, taking care of the 4-year-old who's smashing the dinosaur on his sister, and creating a safe container for your children is a healing act. Yeah, and it's a healing act for them, and it's a healing act for us, because we probably didn't have that. Yeah, and creating new qualities with our partners, or creating a new quality with a work-life balance. So it's daily practice. Yeah, and it's also a practice of compassion with ourselves, and compassion with the people that we live in with. Yeah, and then also the community that we live with. Yeah, if we talk about the dance community, my sense is that there are many of us who have quite severe trauma, actually, and we've just been very, very skilled at moving around them. I think that, I mean, I know this from myself. I know this from my own story. Yeah, I've identified that I've had sexual abuse in my childhood. Yeah, and I spent many, many years not looking at that, and not having to look at it, because I had so much fun, and I had so much pleasure, and I had so many resources dealing with my life, working with these incredibly inspiring people, working with art and you know and beauty. Yeah, and so not until I sort of had to, also getting older, until some symptoms became much, much bigger to ignore, and also, of course, doing psychotherapy, I was not able before to look at that pain, and to look at the trauma of that. And of course, it comes back. Yeah, it comes back from different generations. So if we look at the dance community, I think really from a totally compassionate heart, I think sometimes we actually need to stop moving, or we need to start going even a little bit deeper. And I know that's uncomfortable, but I think it would also help us.
Yeah, I want to respond to some things you said. I mean, you brought my national identity, and when I think about my personal story, and what are the lessons I've learned by growing up in basically in a land of conflict, and I think this is something also that is something that I fundamentally stand behind, is that life, like the nature of life, is not fair. Life on earth is not something that has any connection to fairness. It's actually more to cruelty and to randomness. From the, like if I look at nature, and like I've seen some documentary about some type of a turtle that, the mother lay the eggs on the beach, and then they are certainly born, and then there are like 100 of them running to the ocean, and like 99% are just being eaten by crabs and vultures that just few of them manage to get to the sea, and yeah, we have the capacity to look at it consciously and say, well, this is not nice, let's try to reduce that. But we are fighting something that, or like, I don't think that we can live in an utopia. And it doesn't mean that we don't need to recognize abuse. And like you've mentioned our kind of shared history, you and your ancestors, your German ancestors, and me and my Jewish ancestor. Yeah, we have we have the Hitler reference always. People can do that. We should not do that anymore. And that's a strong reference. I mean, it's quite extreme reference. There are other extreme references that I think that are less spoken, or that they are more in the shadow than the National Socialist phenomena. But nevertheless, I think we definitely need to act to prevent catastrophes. But I think that it's also important to recognize that we are not entitled to anything. You said it, like you said it yourself. It's like you who would expect that we would deal with such situation like the coronavirus? We are not entitled for everything. You can build all your little castles and structures and buildings, and then suddenly an earthquake comes, and that's it, and you need to deal with it, and it's like, and you need to deal with it. Nobody else can deal. And I think that's why I really admire the message that you bring, because it's super important. I think, with all the desire to change the environment, we have to look at what is happening inside as well. And I want to use it and to go into more like practical aspect that I'm interested. We don't have a lot more time, but I still want to, like, there's so many unasked questions that I have, but I want to ask with something very practical. Touch and pain. How do you negate the border between touch serving as a healing tool and touch that perpetuate trauma?
I forgot his name, but I heard a podcast. So I'm just going to borrow his term. Sorry, I forgot his name. But there's clean pain. Yeah, there's clean pain and there's dirty pain. So if we're looking at clean pain, if you're going into a Rolfing session, for instance, yeah, somebody is going to give you a very intense deep tissue massage or treatment, and you're going to feel pain. That's kind of intrinsic in a Rolfing session. But there is a sense within the body and also within our psyche where we can sense if it is a relieving pain or a pain that is somehow connected on a deeper level that is ready to be released. Yeah, and you can apply that to a physical pain, or you can also apply that to a psychological pain. So if we're looking at, so I said the example of the Rolfing, but if we're in an authentic movement session and there is something that is moving you that feels painful, and in authentic movement it's even more clear because there's nobody around who is initiating that. It's only you. Yeah, might be another mover, but at the core of it, you are in your full self responsibility because you have your eyes closed, so it's coming out or from your inside out. And there might be pain that is occurring. Yeah, and we might not know the content for it, or we might not know where it belongs to, but in its purest sense, pain shows up and it needs or wants to be released. Yeah, and if we give ourselves that space, that safety to simply again move through it, express it, then it can also it can also go, or it can become a more integrated part of our life, yeah, depending on how deep or how traumatic that pain was. So in comparison, dirty pain would be abuse. Dirty pain would be somebody smacking you, or somebody causing or intentionally also causing pain. Yeah. Sometimes there is pain that we, of course, cause the loved ones around us, and we don't actually mean to. Yeah, we can negotiate if that's clean pain or dirty category? Pain. But I think the main. I'm sorry.
No, I was just asking if this would be a different category, like when you experience pain through somebody unintentionally causing you pain.
Yeah. Well, I think that's such a reality of relationship also, is because we're triggering each other on old wounds that are sort of that show up in daily life situations. So I might the way I speak to my partner might not be okay, but it might bring up a deeper pain in him because he has been yelled at by his mother so many times. So it's often in close relationships, that is actually one of the biggest challenges, is to differentiate is this new pain, and can we actually say stop to that, or is this just going into resonance with an old pain that I had from my childhood. Yeah, that goes into a whole sort of relationship aspect. But if you're talking about touch and pain, I think the main aspect of it is that you can very much trust the sensibility of your client or the person being touched, I think people know that intuitively if it's uncomfortable, and if it's uncomfortable in the sense of too much, yeah, if it's tension or if it's weight, you know this also from contact improvisation. When we receive weight, oftentimes there is a discomfort also, but there's also a great amount of joy of receiving somebody else's body weight. Yeah, it might hurt a little bit on the ribs here or there, or it might hurt for a moment, but the overall sensation is a much more joyful or connective or also energy bringing connection or touch. Yeah. Did that answer any of their question?
Yeah, sorry, there was a little, like the connection was not that smooth, so I got partially the answer, but I have one specific question, because you said like that you think that to some degree we can use the intuition in order to know if something is too much and if something is, like what you said, dirty or clean pain. But that's something that I find very, very difficult to know if it's true, or like to agree with, because I feel like that, like our intuition is so much shaped also by past experiences. And like, I don't know, if I give an example of my dad, who I love so very much, and he's been working as a farmer all his life, so he has quite a kyphosis in the upper back. So when I tell him to stand straight, for him it feels more like what a mini bridge will feel for me. So his intuition is already shaped by his current situation, and I feel that it's like, I totally agree with you that touch is a necessary thing, and like that's why so many people like yourself and myself have been attracted to the world of contact improvisation, because there's a lot of space to bring touch, invite touch in a playful way, but there's also like now a strong rise of people advocating for consent, and starting to say like we should find a way to dictate how to touch, kind of offering top-down solutions to solve the problem of the negative potential of touch. And I don't necessarily agree that that's the right way, but I do recognize that there is a problem, that not all of us are intuitively tuned, and I find it very difficult to answer myself as well. How do I do it? How do I know, like, yeah, how do you do it for yourself? Let's forget about like an answer for everybody, but what's your tool?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what you're asking about is really about listening. Yeah, the quality of listening. If we invite a culture of listening, and a culture of a relatively free space that includes the possibility for emotional expression. What I see often in the culture of contact improvisation is an overriding of the emotions. Yeah, I'm to blame for that myself. I've done that many times, just for the joy of the ride, for the joy of the rush. Yeah, but sometimes it really needs more of a slowing down to actually catch up with what it is that we're feeling. Yeah, am I feeling comfortable with that person? Am I sensing that other person? Do I have a sense of whether that other person is even able to say yes or no? I think a lot of times when there is boundary crossing, it also has to do with the person who is unable to say stop. Yeah, I mean, basically the definition of somebody who has been sexually abused is the inability to say, here is my boundary. This is how you recognize them as an adult. They will find out later, and they will hopefully even articulate that later to you, that their boundary has been crossed. But in that moment, they're not able to. Yeah, and of course, I'm a woman, so it's a different story. Like if we're looking at a dance situation at a contact jam, I will less likely cross somebody else's boundary, because there is just a much stronger history of men crossing women's boundaries. Yeah, and I'm not saying that as a judgmental view. It's just a statistical. Yeah, it's statistical that more men cross boundaries, and that we live in a sexualized world. That women, I think there's about 30% of all women have experienced sexual abuse in in the whole world, and I think about 60% of all women have experienced sexual assault or boundary crossing. Yeah. So of course that is loaded. It's hugely loaded. Yeah. And how do we go back to a contact jam knowing about this? Yeah. So the only thing that we can do is we can trust the moment. I mean, it's the same thing as going back home with your wife and saying, okay, we had these terrible fights. How do we trust each other again? You just go on loving what you do, and you go on trusting that the next step will be the right thing, and you talk about it. Yeah. So if you ask me personally, I think for me it has a lot to do with slowing down. It has a lot to do with looking at really looking at the shadow, going through the shadow work, committing to the uncomfortable places, and committing to communicating. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's already so complicated. Like even the
It
simple
is.
answer when it
It
comes
is.
to these topics are complicated answers, because it's like yeah, I think that there is no, as you've mentioned in earlier, there is no, it's very hard to really say what is right and what is wrong, and also it's very hard to say I am good and they are bad, or it's a very, yeah, there is a sentence from a Russian writer, Solzhenitsky, that he says like that the seed of evil, the path for evil is is rooted in every man's heart, something like that. So that we have to recognize it inside of us, and then we can start cleaning it inside of us, and hopefully be able to generate positive change. So, Sabine, I also
Yeah.
want to give you some
I
time, like
can.
to share with the
Yeah.
audience, like what is the, sorry, yeah.
No, I just wanted to add something to be fully inclusive, in the sense that there are many boys. Yeah, I think the story always goes that women have been abused so much, but there's unfortunately quite a lot of sexual and physical abuse that young men have experienced. Yeah, and so I think the key to all of that is that we really um, meet each other with an open heart. Yeah. And that we recognize that the stories that we're trying to unravel, that we're trying to heal, yeah, are not just our personal stories, but they go way back. Yeah. That healing is not a job for just one generation. Yeah. So to be compassionate with ourselves and with the people that we're actually trying to work with in order to find healing. Yeah.
Yeah, amen to that. I think it's that, you know, I was asking myself, should I raise this? Hey, men are also being abused or not? And I'm happy that you took this torch to say it, because especially I think in religious circles there is a lot of at least that's what I recognize in Israel, that in the religious circles there, because there's so much suppressed um, homophobia, then it comes out more often, these type of abuses. Yeah, it's quite a, you know, I feel like we are finishing with a hard tone, and I wanna also offer you a space to kind of lighten us up and share a little bit,
Yeah.
like what is
Yeah.
the future holding for your Institute of Holistic Dance and Dance Pedagogy, and where people can meet you, and what are the channels that people can consume some of your offerings. Yeah, I'm happy to hear as well for myself.
So part of the challenge is how to create workshops, and I'm actually co-teaching a workshop with Alicia Grayson, who is in the U.S., who is in Colorado, but we're actually going to make it happen It's during Easter time from the 31st of March till the 5th of April. And since it is part of the official training, it will happen. And Alicia will come in the afternoons via Zoom. So she will teach online and I will be in person there. And I've never done that, co-teaching through a Zoom situation, but I'm looking forward to it because I love Alicia. I love her work. I love her sense of collaboration, and she brings in a lot of the things that I work with. She's a contact dancer, authentic movement, body psychotherapist, beautiful outdoor person also. Yeah, and the next thing after that is an authentic movement workshop, and the next thing after that is the beginning of my new teachers training, which will start at the end of May. Again, as it looks like right now with the regulations, we will be able to hold the training, and this time without interruptions. There will be some regulations, but there is also touch that is being allowed. We just kind of have to navigate through this. I mean, there are some restrictions, but I'm still happy that it will be able to happen. And we have a big space. We have a great air ventilation. So I'm happy to continue with that. And maybe the other thing that I just want to share is this card set that I've developed, which you might have seen online. It looks like this. And this is the German version. And there's also an English version. And I've created these cards with images from this illustrator part of them she created with her eyes closed. And there's solo exercises and they're partnering exercises. I just love them. They're so beautiful. And there's 76 exercises. You can buy them online. You can also, and I will send them to you, or you can also just get a PDF version of it and to download. And they're for your home use. They're for your practice at home, but also you can apply them to any sort of work that you do in coaching or psychotherapy or nonviolent communication. If you're a trainer of some other method, you can easily integrate some movement, and that's why I also created them. It's for us dancers, but also for other people to have access to movement exercises.
Super nice. Yeah. I will definitely put links to everything at the bottom of the episode for people to stay in touch with you. And also, I want to I hope that we can also re-nourish our relationship. It's been a very, very inspiring conversation for me, and I really feel like we've touched just a bunch of things. I still have like 7 things I want to ask you. So you're definitely going to be here again on my podcast. Prepare for that. And I want to thank you a lot, Sabine, for coming here and sharing your message and opening up. And thank you.
Thank you, Matan. It was a pleasure. And I'm glad to see you on your path. It's really wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for what you have to share and what you continue to share with the world.
Thank you, big sister. Until the next time. For more movement-related content and educational training programs, visit our website at www.movementlab.eu.